Welcome to Opinion Journal Live. I'm Dan Henninger. Well, Muslim demonstrations spread around the world today in countries with Islamic populations and included even the burning of Germany's embassy in Sudan. Here to discuss these events with me are the Journal's Foreign Affairs columnist Bret Stephens. Bret, good to see you. In every instance of the coverage of these demonstrations, Asia, Africa, and certainly the Middle East, it's always noted that they are in response to this movie, The Innocence of Muslims, and that in every case, the people who are demonstrating want the United States government to take responsibility for it and to apologize for a movie that seems to have been made by a guy somewhere in Southern California. How is it that all these populations associate this totally obscure movie with the government of the United States in Washington?
Well, right. You can't be at all surprised that people living in societies where the media is often very largely controlled by government should think that that's how it operates in other places. On the other hand, what do you make of a guy like Mohamed Morsi, the new president of Egypt, who lived in Southern California for many years, has a PhD from one of the UCal universities, campuses, and is insisting that the U.S. government apologize for or prosecute the makers of this movie? And what do you make of the fact, beyond that, that the United States government seems to be bending over backwards to call this movie a hateful movie, and seeing if it can get it blocked on YouTube, and so on. And so you have, in a sense, these colliding pathologies, a pathology on the Arab side of believing that every rumor is a conspiracy, and a pathology on the Western side of believing that the proper response to this kind of insanity is to apologize instead of standing up for core American principles, including the freedom to produce movies like that.
Well, right. I mean, given the scale of the violence that's taking place in so many countries, you'd think this would be, in effect, a teaching moment when someone like Mohamed Morsi, the head of Egypt, could say publicly, you cannot hold the United States government responsible for an event like this.
Right.
But that's not happening.
Yeah, and I think you can't underestimate the extent to which, in the wake of the so-called Arab Spring, the mob runs the Arab world. I mean, there has been a kind of mob rule scene in Cairo for the last 18 months. It's in many ways how the Muslim Brotherhood came to power. I think you have to go back and start reading Gibbon or de Tocqueville on French Revolution to kind of understand the dynamics in which these political leaders don't necessarily have that much of a role except as followers of the whims of the mob. The whims of the mob, in this case, though, often being dictated by Salafist extremists, guys who are
on that, I did want to ask you about that. Are these mobs all across these Islamic countries homogeneous, or there are political gradations to the intensity of the conservatism of the Islamic groups leading the demonstrations?
You probably will require some future sociologist to parse, who are the soccer hooligans, who are the Salafist extremists, who are, the brother of Ayman al-Zawahiri, the head of Al-Qaeda, somewhere in Pakistan or wherever he was active in this demonstration that tried to storm the U.S. embassy. So we will learn exactly who these people are, but it seems, certainly in the case of the attack on our consulate in Benghazi, that this was politically a mob that was ginned up possibly for the purposes of creating cover for a pre-planned attack.
Another thing that I've been struck by, we've had all these events the past 24 hours, demonstrations right now in Cairo, getting more violent. Washington, the Obama administration, seems to have been relatively passive. I don't want to get into the issue here of whether Mitt Romney was right or they were wrong, but the administration, which has been asking to be allowed to take care of this on its own, isn't really saying much of anything.
No, I mean, and I think there's a kind of incoherence of policy here. It's funny because the administration, or at least the president, seemed to want foreign policy to go away for the purposes of this election. Now it seems to be discovering that foreign policy may have its uses in making Obama seem more presidential than you or I might think that he is. Part of the problem, though, is I don't think that this administration has really diagnosed where the heart of this crisis lies. They're talking a lot about Libya, which was a terrorist attack. They're not talking about Cairo. They're not coming to grips with the fact that now in Cairo you have a president who, as Obama inadvertently admitted, is not an ally of the United States.
All right, thanks, Bret. We're going to leave it right there.